My name is Shane Martinez. I'm a lawyer with ICJP Canada. So we're here as part of the launch of the Global 195 initiative to seek accountability of Israeli war criminals and those who are enabling them around the world. This is important because countries such as Canada and the UK have historically been hands-off with respect to Israel and war crimes that Israel has carried out against the Palestinian people. For too long, people have been relying on Canada, the UK, and other countries to take action on their own initiative to try and hold individuals and Israel as a country accountable for its actions, and they just have not lived up to that obligation. So now what we're trying to do is we're trying to use tools such as private prosecutions to pursue those individuals ourselves and hold them accountable in courts around the world. So one of the kinds of crimes that we would be pursuing is the offense of torture. Torture in Canadian law is defined as the intentional infliction of severe mental or physical harm on a person. That's a crime that can be carried out for retribution on an individual for the acts of a third person or for discriminatory reasons. It's very broadly defined in Canadian law, so torture is one that we're looking at very closely. There's also other offenses as well within the War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity Act. However, those crimes would require us to file a complaint with the Attorney General and the RCMP to have them investigate and lay the process, pursue those proceedings, because only the Attorney General has jurisdiction to pursue offenses under that particular legislation. We will be pursuing not only individuals who have served in the IDF, but as enlisted soldiers, but also volunteers who have gone over and assisted in non-combat capacities. It also involves looking at corporations who have assisted in terms of arms manufacturers, both ones in Canada and ones in Israel as well, looking at where we may have jurisdiction to pursue proceedings of that nature. And we're also going to be looking at Israeli officials as well and trying to use offenses in Canada, which are quasi-universal jurisdiction offenses, to try and hold them accountable as well. We're trying to make sure that we can build a strong network of like-minded people who are interested and serious about trying to hold individuals accountable instead of relying on the state. We need to use the tools at our disposal, such as private prosecutions where they exist, and we need to make sure that we're acting in concert with one another and collaborating as closely as we possibly can to achieve these kinds of goals. One of the cases that ICJP Canada was involved in was the prosecution of an organization called Sorel Canada, and we succeeded in having criminal charges laid against them for a violation of Section 11 of the Foreign Enlistment Act, which prohibits the recruitment of individuals for engagements with a foreign army. We were able to present sufficient evidence to a Canadian court on all elements of the offense to have those charges laid. The charges were laid. Sorel was required to appear in court as an organization. We criminally charged the organization. But what ended up happening is that the Canadian government interfered in the case. They exercised their discretion to take it over, and they shut it down. They shut it down on something that we would call a legal absurdity. They claimed that there was no evidence of an engagement between the volunteers that were being recruited and the Israeli military, even though there was evidence that had been put before the court, which the court had found sufficient for the charge to be laid in the first place, that the volunteers were wearing IDF uniforms, living on IDF bases, cleaning tanks, doing ammunition checks. They were required to follow IDF rules, and even the Israeli military itself referred to the program as a volunteer IDF opportunity. Canada's rationale about why it shut down the case was, again, in our view, a legal absurdity, and that's a challenge that we need to be ready for, is the government coming in and trying to interfere in the future, but we can't let that deter us from pursuing these cases where there's grounds to do so. So there are research teams within ICJP which are very diligently collecting information on soldiers who we believe that there's reasonable and probable grounds have engaged in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other offenses. That information is being collected. It's being very carefully reviewed by legal teams, and then we're acting on it where there's grounds to do so. Suspected war crimes can include a number of things. It can include intentionally cleansing an area of its inhabitants. It can include attacking civilian infrastructure on purpose, and it can also include acts of violence carried out against civilians. I can tell you that all of those types of crimes are ones that we have been able to find evidence of in some fashion or another through online research. The next steps for the coalition right now are to continue to grow. We're finalizing a number of cases, both here in the UK and in Canada, and then we need to bring those proceedings in court.